AG report proves this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption. This NDP Liberal government spent $200 million on McKinsey, which is just another example of this Prime Minister favouring his insider friends. The AG stated this was a flagrant disregard for procurement rules as the government sole sourced with no justification and competitive processes were changed to favour McKinsey. The clear favouritism is just one more example of this government choosing their friends over integrity. Why has this Prime Minister been caught time and time again red-handed, giving his friends lucrative contracts?
The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we thank my colleague for asking this important question, which allows me to thank again the Auditor General for her important work on this topic. The report comes to similar conclusions as the report that were released by the government last year, and based on those previous findings, we have been acting for more than a year to end the standing offers with McKinsey and all similar companies, which also introduces stricter requirements for departments doing their own contracting authorities.
The Honourable Member from Calgary, Midnapore.
Dominic Barton, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or corruption. Dominic Barton is the former global head of McKinsey who was handpicked by the PM to be the Canadian ambassador to China and the chair of the Economic Advisory Council. So it's no surprise that after 2016, McKinsey contracting began to go up and up with few signs of stopping. He even joined a meeting between McKinsey and the Canada Infrastructure Bank while he was the ambassador, a meeting he hid from members of committee. Why should Canadians tolerate a Prime Minister who promotes his rich friends and a government run by McKinsey?
Yeah, something needs to happen, man. This has just gone too far.
And procurement.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said in English, but I can repeat in French, we are very grateful to the AG for her hard work on this file. Now, the report has similar conclusions to the report published by the government last year, but we will continue to consider the recommendations. For about a year, bids for tender for McKinsey and similar businesses have been cancelled, and we will continue to make requirements stricter for departments with these types of contracting processes.
Member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
The Auditor General's report proves that after 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or corruption. In her audit of McKinsey, the AG found this Liberal government broke the rules, showed clear favoritism, and could not demonstrate value for money. This Prime Minister needs to take responsibility. Almost $200 million was awarded to McKinsey. Contracts were rigged, Liberal insiders got rich, and taxpayers are on the hook. Will the Prime Minister finally ban McKinsey from government contracting?
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've already answered this question multiple times now. I would just add that in addition to what I've said, these contracts have been closely examined several times, including by the Auditor General, and no indication of political interference was ever found. But talking of contracts, Mr. Speaker, may I talk about dental care, about which the Conservative leader has nothing to say because he believes and claims that it doesn't exist. 2 million seniors in Canada, Mr. Speaker, have already registered with dental. Now, why is the Conservative leader misinforming and hurting seniors by telling them it doesn't exist?
The Honourable Member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The Auditor General's report proves once again that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost and the corruption. Now, Liberals love McKinsey, and apparently all is fair in love and government contracting. Most of these $200 million in McKinsey contracts didn't follow the rules. In almost half, it wasn't clear that the contract was needed. And in some cases, the government even rigged the process to favour McKinsey. Why do these Liberals show such affection for McKinsey, but such disdain for Canadian taxpayers?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister.
We have a McKinsey in Corp government.
That question has already been answered several times by my colleagues, but I am glad to hear the Conservatives, albeit obliquely, talking about income inequality in our society. It's a concern that we share. And the good news for the Conservatives is they have the opportunity to support us and to support our increase in the capital gains inclusion rate, a way to ask those at the very top to help the Canadian middle class. Let's see if the Conservatives will do it.
Yeah.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, for years now, CBSA officers are asking for a fair retirement. It's a question of justice and respect for these workers that guarantee our security. For 3 years now, a committee has been studying the matter. The President of the Treasury Board received recommendations in December. Since, nothing has been said. There could be a strike starting on Thursday in 48 hours. Why are the Liberals lagging again when it comes to defending workers' rights? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, that's simply not true. We are at the table. We are continuing to negotiate because it is essential to have an agreement that is fair for taxpayers and also for our public servants. We continue to be here for the public service in order to reach an agreement that is fair and equitable. We are here, Mr. Speaker.
The explosive Auditor General's report proves that the Prime Minister is not worth the cost and corruption. This NDP Liberal government knew conflict of interest policies weren't being followed, and wait for it, did absolutely nothing. No. 76 million.
Oh, who would have thought?
By Liberal-appointed directors, never to be seen again. Canadians deserve so much better. Yeah. If the minister knew about these conflicts, why didn't he take his job seriously and fire the directors?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, actually welcome the question from the member because it seems that they have not really listened, Mr. Speaker. The moment we heard of allegation, we launched the investigation when they were asleep, Mr. Speaker. We launched the investigation by Raymond Chabot, Grant Thornton, and McCarthy Tetreault. And once we have that, we suspended funding to the organization. The chair of the board and the CEO resigned. We demanded an action plan by management, Mr. Speaker. We are committed to restore the funding to the firms. We are committed to have more governance, and we are committed to ensure that there will be trust in a new organization, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
The minister did nothing for 48 months, even though he had officials sitting in the meetings. And the Auditor General's explosive report on the NDP Liberal Green Slush Fund shows the personal friends of the Prime Minister funneled obscene amounts of money into their own pockets. The Auditor General confirmed that an incredible 186 times, almost half of all the Green Slush Fund projects, Liberal swindlers voted themselves hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to their companies. Will the Prime Minister call in the police and make these Liberal swindlers pay back this money?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that there were a lot of people on this side slipping at the switch, Mr. Speaker. What I've said is very clear. We received allegation and we investigated, Mr. Speaker. We investigated. We made sure that we would go to the bottom of this. We suspended the funding to the organization. The chair of the board and the CEO resigned. We made sure that there would be a management plan in place, Mr. Speaker. We want to restore confidence. We expect everyone to adhere by the IRS governance. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we're proposing a new model of governance that will make sure that public fund is dispersed and with the level of governance that all Canadians expect.
After 9 years, another gag order victim of this Liberal NDP Prime Minister has come forward. This time, it's his own parliamentary budgeting officer who revealed yesterday that there's a secret government document that would lambaste and completely put to shame the claims on the carbon tax scam. This secret report would confirm most Canadians are worse off in this scam than what they get in phony rebates, and emissions have gone up. Will this Liberal NDP Prime Minister lift the gag order on the PBO so Canadians and everyone can know what they already know, that this Prime Minister and this carbon tax scam are not worth the cost?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and the Minister for Fitness and Amateur Sport.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer does important and essential work, and we thank him for the update. Recently, he had an update on his website saying that the last estimate that he had done was based on faulty information, and we thank him for correcting the record. It confirms what we know all along, that economists and independent organizations across this country have been saying, which is that 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off with federal carbon pricing. But, Mr. Speaker, the reason the Conservatives are so bent out of shape about this is because it re-emphasizes the fact that carbon pricing both lowers emissions and the Canada Carbon Rebate supports affordability.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Well, maybe they're gagging the PBO because they're ashamed. He's going to reveal that this carbon tax scam is not worth the cost, and it'll confirm that a majority of Canadians are worse off in this scam than what they get back in phony rebates. Look, if they don't want to ungag him and they don't want to release the report, why don't they just call a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide whether they want to keep this scam or axe a tax under a common sense Conservative government?
Man, I would love to see the results of a carbon tax election right now.
Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and Sport and Physical Activity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives have clung to this flawed scenario, and they refuse to correct their own misinformation on this very important subject. Mr. Speaker, I would recommend that the Leader of the Opposition maybe go to Carleton over the summer and brush up on his mathematics. However, it's very clear that it's probably elementary school that he needs to go back to. We're talking about adding and subtracting, Mr. Speaker. Conservative math just isn't adding up these days, but I want to reassure Canadians that on July 15th, the Canada Carbon Rebate will be arriving in their bank accounts or their mailboxes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Mr. Speaker, everybody knows in Canada that, except for maybe this NDP Liberal coalition, that they pay more in the carbon tax than they get back in a rebate. It turns out that even this government knew, even the Prime Minister knows, and you want to know why? We know that because the PBO officer said that. When will this government finally release this report and end the carbon tax cover-up?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we know and Canadians know that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back with the carbon rebate. But, Mr. Speaker, there is someone who is being gagged, and that is an MP who sits in this House of Commons, the MP for Peace River Westlaw. He had the temerity to say out loud what the majority of Conservative MPs believe, which is that a woman should not have the right to choose. Now we know that these Conservatives who campaigned on a price on pollution and are disavowing it will do the same thing with the woman.
9 years of this NDP Liberal government, the Prime Minister is hiding the truth about the carbon tax, that it costs Canadians more than they pay. Yesterday, the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed he'd received information from the Liberal government that confirms his report, that Canadians pay more, but was under a Liberal gag order from talking about it. Canadians know it costs them more. When will the Prime Minister stop gagging the PBO and release the secret report that proves Canadians are right?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the only person being gagged in Ottawa right now is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Peace River Westlaw.
That's right. That's true.
He committed the cardinal political crime among this power-hungry Conservative Party of actually telling the truth, of actually telling Canadians what he believes and what he intends to do. That is to end a woman's right to choose. He's in a majority in that caucus. It's time for the Conservatives to tell Canadians the truth about their intentions.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member from Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, on April 16th, the Liberals announced that they were increasing taxes on the investments of Canadians through an increase to the capital gains tax. Right. That tax is supposed to take effect 3 weeks from today, and Canadians have not seen the legislation yet. Right. One wonders what the government's doing over there. When will the government show small businesses, families, farmers, entrepreneurs, and physicians the text of the bill so that they know how this tax increase will impact them?
The The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Finally, a good question from the Conservatives. I am so glad to say that we will begin the legislative process to raise the capital gains inclusion rate before the House rises. And one of the reasons that is so important is it will give Canadians a chance to see the true colors of these Conservatives. So far, they have dithered and they have dodged, and they have not said whether they are in favor of asking those who are doing the very best to pay a